Good morning, how are you?
I'm good.
How's your week going so far?
Very good. Thanks.
Okay, so we just have a few things on our agenda, so as usual we'll start off with something good, and then we're going to jump into the observation that I conducted this Wednesday, and then just finally we'll end with some housekeeping items. So let's start off with a good thing since the last time we met.
Yesterday I went on a great field trip. 50 kids went to a poetry slam, and one of the kids made it to the semifinals, which is great. Looked like they had a really good time. Some kids said that it was the best field trip ever. So.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear. And I was there last year, so I just know how amazing that is, and I'm glad that more students got to go. Who was the teacher that chaperoned?
Nice.
Okay, did she enjoy it?
Yeah, she had a great time.
Awesome. Okay, I think on my end, something good since the last time we met. I think the conversation that we had during PD this past Wednesday was just kind of good to start reflecting about how to develop that 5-year plan. So I typed all the notes and then just looking at all the different things that teachers have shared. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do, but it's just really nice to have like that starting point. So we'll see how the next month goes in terms of planning that, and then that Saturday meeting. Okay, so on Wednesday I was in your classroom for a few minutes, and I came in to specifically observe indicator 3.2a around the structure of the lesson. So as we spoke before, specifically I was looking at what we both agreed on at differentiation. So students essentially doing different work, working sort of like at their own level, whether that's in groups or individually. So tell me a little bit of what I saw during the time that I was there.
What you saw was one Wednesday class, a short class, from a semester-long project, which basically has a student pick a classic poem, which is a poem that someone else wrote, and then respond to it by writing their own poem, and then perform both of those poems. So we're at the stage right now where they're just finalizing their performances, and they will be performing in a few weeks.
Okay, and let's see. Okay, and then how did, so going back to the focus, the chosen focus, how did students get to select what performance skill to focus on?
So there is a rubric that I gave them at the beginning of the semester, and it lists a certain number of things that are required of them for their performance. So that's kind of me breaking down the different skills of a good performance. And so they have kind of a weekly tracker that they use every Wednesday to track their progress as well as their thinking on the project, since it's such a long project. So they try to capture kind of each Wednesday and their thinking. And so I put up on the board the 5 performance skills that they would need to ultimately get a 4 on the performance standard of this project. And so based on their previous work as well as just how they're thinking that day, they would choose one of those 5 to really focus on when they were rehearsing either individually or with a partner of their choice or in a group of their choice.
Okay, and then when you mentioned the tracker, so this is something that they do at the end of every Wednesday, or when do they track?
So they track 2 things. They track their memorization on weekly quizzes, so that's a quantitative measurement of their progress. And then they set a goal for themselves at the beginning of every class, which is their focus. And then at the end of each class, they do a 3-minute quick reflection on how they did in terms of meeting that goal, like their strengths and their areas for growth. And then they do a quick kind of how are you feeling about the project overall. So that's more kind of qualitative.
Okay.
So the first one is quantitative in terms of the memorization quiz, and the second one is more qualitative.
Okay, and then so I do remember, so I recall from your observation, after they did that memorization quiz at the very beginning of class, you did ask them to select one of those skills to focus on. So just kind of based on what you saw from your students, Do you think, so did they go back to how they did previously to select that? Do you feel it was more of, let me just pick something? Was it an informed decision? That's a good question.
I would say it was not an informed decision. I think for the past few weeks, most students have been picking memorization. So I think maybe their quizzes have been informing them that they need to work on this. However, for me, that's a really basic skill that is not really pushing the rigor of the class.
Okay.
So I think what I would want them to be doing is thinking more about the higher level skills of their performance in terms of like emphasizing certain words or bringing some kind of emotion into one specific line. So I think that it might be informed, but it's not informed at the level that I would want it to be, because they're picking kind of the easier task to work on.
So on your end, what do you think is something that you can do to ensure that maybe like next Wednesday when they're practicing this, they're actually picking something based on informed decision?
So I think there's a few things that I could do. The challenge though, I think, is because it's a short class, I would have to pick the best idea, I guess, but also try to do it in a kind of a quick way so that it's both effective, right? It's not a waste of time, but also that it leaves students enough time to practice the actual skill that they choose. So like I could have them actually take out the rubric I gave them at the beginning of the semester and go through it. I feel like I could show an exemplar performance to kind of remind students what each of those things look like, and then have them pick based on kind of that quick reminder. I think maybe I could not give memorization as one of the options, to force students to go further. Those are the three that come to mind.
Yeah, I like the idea of, actually like all of them, but I do also see what you mean by the short Wednesday. Have you thought about maybe doing some sort of like rotation or station, and how that might look in this particular lesson? I know it's a little different, but do you think something like that could work?
Yeah, I think stations would be a good idea. I think the challenge again is with the timing, right? If you have by the time they finish the memorization quiz, and then I really do want them to do the reflection at the end, right? That's another 5 minutes. So it really is like a 25 minute block of like rehearsal time, of work time. And so I think maybe if I limit the number of skills maybe to 3, and then you can spend 7 or 8 minutes at each station and really pinpoint just like one specific thing, right? If you have a poem of 20 lines, instead of saying practice emphasizing in the whole poem, I think that would be too not enough structure for students. But if you say pick one line and practice emphasizing one word in that one line, I think that could help that one line, but then also could help them in the practice of what it means to practice emphasizing a certain line. So it could be like something that you could build up to then more independent practice.
Yeah, I like that. I think, so this is what I'm hearing you say. So if you were to do some sort of station, maybe like at the beginning doing like a quick exemplar, but focusing in on like 2 to 3 components. Then students would either rotate through some of the stations, and then rather than rehearsing the entire poem, just do a part of it, whether that's one verse or multiple, and then specifically focus in on that one, right? Okay, so the other component that I noticed while I was observing last Wednesday was that I did see your students working with someone else, so they were partnered. So tell me a little bit about how can you use feedback in this particular activity better?
I think that one thing that I can do is students can be using the rubric that I originally gave them at the beginning of the semester for this project. But I think that because it is a Wednesday and it's a shorter class, focusing on all the components of the rubric would be too overwhelming and not effective. And so I think what could happen in terms of feedback for this particular activity could be that at the end of their practice or their rehearsal on a given part of the rubric, they could have their partner grade them, but just on like one performance skill.
Okay. Okay, so rather than providing feedback on the multiple components of their performance, just focusing in on one particular indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, okay, that's good. I mean, just to kind of summarize, so again, I was just in there to observe the structure of the lesson, specifically focusing on differentiation. So today, we kind of talked a little bit about some strategies, and maybe something that I can see you try next Wednesday is a little bit around, one, just doing maybe some station work to really differentiate and see where kids are. And then with that station work, just kind of focusing in on one particular indicator, looking at exemplars on like one indicator, and then in terms of the feedback component, students providing feedback to each other by focusing on one thing at a time. And then continuing to use the tracker.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned adding additional questions
Mm-hmm.
to reflect on that. Great, so I will be there next Wednesday. Maybe it'll be the same class, maybe a different class, but I'll definitely be there to see some of this stuff in action. Okay, the other thing on our agenda was just some housekeeping items. So as you know, 10th graders will be testing next Monday, Tuesday for science ESTs. So just so you know, some of the students with special needs will be pulled out. So if they arrive late to class, it's because they're testing. And then we also do have a couple of AP exams going on. Okay. Other than that, I'll look through your final exams for both of your classes, and then next Wednesday when we meet, next Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
we'll debrief the observation from Wednesday, and then we'll talk a little bit about your final exams for both classes. Any questions that you have or anything on your end that you want to add?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. So then I'll be there next week, and then we'll meet again same time on Thursday.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you,
Thanks.
Elias.
Thanks.